Well, I'm very glad to be with you today. See a lot of familiar faces out in the room, and I see some I don't know, and I've shaken the hand of a few of you and look forward to getting to know some of you perhaps better over time. I want to recognize some of my family that decided they'd come and hear me talk today, and why don't you just raise your hand? I won't make you stand up, but my wife of 41 and a half years, Becky, my daughter Lauren Young is sitting next to her, my son Webb Wilson is next to there, and then my brother-in-law married my youngest sister Carol, Dr. Bill West. Bill, where are you? Back in the back. Great. So I'm really glad to have you all here. Here's what I thought we would do. We'll give you some personal information about me. I told Pearson she didn't need to say anything because I've covered a few data points about myself, and then we'll follow that with a discussion about my business history and some experiences that I've had, including what's going on in our businesses today. And then hopefully along the way you'll hear some key things that I've learned from all these experiences. And then hopefully we'll have enough time. If you have some questions, I'll try to respond to those at the end. So that'll be kind of our plan of attack. Briefly, personally, I was born in Memphis to Kemmons and Dorothy Wilson. I'm the oldest of 5 children. There are 3 boys and 2 girls. Went to East High School. What you may not know is that I went to East when it opened in 1948 as a first grader. And I, along with about 35 others, stayed there for all 12 years. And we were the first graduating class that had gone all the way through East High. So that's one of my claims to fame. So when I have our class reunion, we always come back on Saturday morning over at East High and kind of walk the halls and remember lots of things. Some remember a lot more than I remember, I'll tell you that. In fact, I have my 50th high school reunion next April, which I'm looking forward to. Went to Vanderbilt University, studied economics with a minor in business administration, but I developed a passion because of a couple of professors for humanities and history, and so those passions have stayed with me since Vanderbilt. I went to the military after that, joined the Tennessee Air National Guard. They sent me off to flight school in Lubbock, Texas, where the wind blows and sometimes the mud blows because we have some strong winds and rain, and that whips up the dust out there, making it mud. But I had already gotten my pilot's license in high school. Dad was a pilot in the war, encouraged my brother Bob and I to fly. And so I stayed in the Guard for my required 6 years. I liked it so much, I stayed for 20. And I retired after 20 years as a part-time pilot flying heavy transports over most of the world. From there, I went to graduate school in Boston, went to Harvard Business School in 1966 and graduated in '68, following which I married this wonderful lady over here, Becky, from Jackson, Tennessee. We had met at Vanderbilt. I dated her about 2 or 3 months my junior year, her sophomore year, and but we kind of went back to old flames, and then she started dating one of my best friends in senior year, and I lost touch with her for a couple of years and tracked her down in New York City where she was a Pan Am flight attendant, and met her on the front steps of her apartment, and we fell in love. But after we married in '68, we moved to Memphis, and I joined the Kemmons Wilson companies, Kemmons Wilson Inc., which is a business Dad had founded in 1948. And I was there for about a year and a half, and his partner Wallace Johnson asked me to come over and help Dad. Dad needed help in the sense that he was always entrepreneurial, as you know from what you probably heard or maybe read about him, but he was not always organized, and he was already focused on something. Mr. Johnson said he needed some help, and I said, well, maybe I can, maybe I can't, I don't know. So I went over there, spent a year. I think I was sort of helpful, had a very interesting experience because Holiday Inn's made a huge acquisition of about 40 hotels from a couple of franchise holders, and I participated in that, in those negotiations, and actually contributed, I think, one kind of unique idea to the way that thing finally came together. But in any event, I told Dad, I said, you know, you and I are kind of different, and I probably ought to go back to the family business and have a little bit more freedom there, and you get on with your holiday ends activity. So I went back to the family business in 1970, and that's where I've been since. Becky and I have 4 great kids. You've met 2 of those. We have 6 grandchildren, soon to be 7 here in about, well, we don't know, maybe a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Our daughter kind of delivers early, so we'll have to see. This is not Lauren, this is her sister who lives out in Denver. Right. But Spence Jr. Works with me at the Kemmons Wilson companies. He focuses on our private equity initiatives and activities, and he's working really close with me about in our resort time-sharing business, about which I'll tell you more in a little bit. It's one of the more exciting things that we do. Lauren heads up the Kemmons Wilson Family Foundation, which is based here in Memphis and out in our offices, and is doing a superb job looking after the family's interest there. It was a kind of a small foundation until Mother and Dad's death, and then it expanded substantially in size, and we needed some professional assistance and activity, and she and 2 of her I guess cousins are actively involved in that business. Bill West's daughter, Lee, is part of that group over there. Webb is at Centennial Partners, and a fund-to-funds business here in town, and I get a chance to work with him a little bit because we have a small interest in that company. And obviously I get the chance to work with Lauren because we're active in the foundation at the board level. My daughter Rebecca lives in Denver, and I don't get to work with her, and I'm sorry about that, but she and her husband and two little boys live out there. She does a great job as director of marketing for First Western Bank and Trust Company, and in some ways I guess I do get to work with her because we have those 2 kids. She has those 2 kids, so we work on them a little bit together. Some of my personal passions include flying, as you might imagine, which I still do regularly. Golf when I can. I enjoy it a lot, I just don't play it much. Becky and I have developed a passion for Western art and for collecting Western art, and also autograph collecting. We started that shortly after we were married, actually. And then I enjoy hunting and fishing and lots of other things too, but those are some of the major passions. Community-wise, I have spent a lot of my time at Rhodes College over the years, and also with youth villages, plus a few other organizations, but those were the main ones. So now that you know a little bit about my personal background, it may be no surprise that some of Dad's entrepreneurial DNA filtered down to me and to my brothers, but it didn't actually totally flow to either of us, because as a result of his personal success and his desire for us to have a very, very good education, the one that he missed, he sent us to good schools, and we worked hard, as was the discipline in the Wilson family, to do so, and he gave us that chance to be as educated as we could, to have the chance that he didn't have. He only went to the 11th grade, or actually partially through to the 11th grade, and he left school at Central High School to support his mother and himself during the Depression. She had lost her job, and he felt he had to go do that. And he was already doing a lot of things before that, entrepreneurial-wise, but he said he went to work full-time, so to speak, in the 11th grade there. His business orientation, therefore, was, I would just sort of say, instinctive. He didn't get education like a lot of us have had the opportunity to do. It was sort of a result of necessity and actually what I would just describe as self-discovery. He just kind of knew who he was, knew what he could do, and was confident in his abilities to act on that. In many ways, as I have thought about that, I think he was perhaps a little more fortunate because he sees things, or he saw things, quite frankly, more simply than I did, or my brothers do, or perhaps a number of you do with all this education that we have. He wasn't encumbered with the complexity that I have my educational experience. I could start thinking about, oh, we got HR issues, we got this, we got that, we got to think about. That wasn't on his mind. His mind was, this looks good, and we're going to go do that, and we'll figure it out along the way. I used to talk to him all the time. His motto was ready, fire, aim. He used to laugh at me a lot about that. But I brought some copies with me of his homespun wisdom. Some of you have maybe seen it posted somewhere, read it somewhere, called 20 Tips. And I'm going to stick that over here on this little table, and you're welcome. I think I have enough copies for everyone to take one. But family, you don't need to take one. I may run out if you do. So I welcome you to take one of those. Let me stick it over there now while I think about it. The other thing I brought with me was, if you want to know a little bit more about him and his life story, is this autobiography that he wrote several years before his death, Half Luck and Half Brains. That was kind of one of his mottos. It's the Kemmons Wilson Holiday Inn story, but it's really a lot more than just the Holiday Inn story in there. It's a lot about his life growing up, our family together, about our developing Orange Lake Country Club in Orlando, and a lot of other things. And if you get tired of reading, there are over 300 photographs in the back, which you can look and see what we all look like at different ages, and interest yourself there. I brought this just to show you, but if you're interested, and I'm not promoting this book, but if you're interested, you can call Dottie Bonds, who is my dad's former assistant. She still works for us at the Kemmons Wilson Companies. We're in the phone book, and she'll be able to mail you one for a very nominal cost. And then lastly, if you haven't seen the Kemmons Wilson Gallery on the second floor at the University of Memphis Holiday Inn, I'd encourage you to go by there if you're interested in knowing more about him. You don't have to pay anything to do that. You have to buy the book. But it will tell you a little bit about his life, his interest, and you'll see a little bit more about that. The book, I just want to mention, is full of some great stories. I may mention a couple of them here, but there are a whole lot more in it. And it has some great insights, I think, as well. He had a fun time putting it together. He was asked once if he was going to slow down and smell the roses. And he replied to that person, he said, business was the roses for him. So he was not going to do anything other than work, and he did up to a year or so before his death. There was a time in my early life, my early business life, that I was pretty uncertain about myself, and maybe you have experienced that as well. And my uncertainty dealt with how was I ever going to measure up to the accomplishments and the achievements that he had. That's probably an issue that children of successful parents in business or professional parents who are professionally successful have. Fortunately, I would say that I overcame that at a fairly relatively young age by concluding that we were just different. We had different skill sets, different interests, different approaches to the way we did things, thought about things, and that really we could be a complement to each other. And the good news is that he agreed that that was the best. We got the best out of the two of us working together. So Dad and I and my brothers have had a great partnership while we were together, and not without its frustrations, as you can imagine, both for him and for me. But it was a great learning experience to be with him. And he told me that he was glad to have me, and I appreciated that. And so we hunkered down for about 4 or 5 years, and with some good fortune and with the support and the patience of several banks here in Memphis, we were able to get through all that, pay the debts, and kind of come out on the other side with a little lighter change in our pockets, so to speak, but with our heads high and having fulfilled all our obligations. But it was a scary time for fairly young guy getting started. Since 1948, my brothers and I went back and did a little research, and we think our company has invested in over 400 different businesses. Now some are a little bit alike, some are not. The construction jobs, the construction business was one business, so not every job was one of these 400. But if we did an office building, I would, even though we might have 3 in a location, I'd call that three of those 400. But we also did a number of businesses that are really operating businesses. And if you can imagine, all of these required a lot of attention, a lot of management activity. Many of you got your own businesses, you started your own businesses, so you got to deal with finance, accounting, collections, HR, marketing, sales, and in our case we had some manufacturing businesses, strategy evaluation. So I spent all my time on those kinds of things, and so that's kind of where I cut my teeth. I had good business school background, but I guarantee you it didn't prepare me for a lot of that, and certainly didn't prepare me for that terrible recession that we were in. But the thing about it that I think was powerful to me was that it required me to be quite flexible in my thinking. I had to move from business to business issues, from industry to industry, from thinking about this kind of thing to thinking about that kind of thing, to different channels of distribution, whatever the case might be. And it was a challenge then. It's certainly a challenge today. Fortunately, I think my ability to deal with this wide range of businesses has actually worked well for me over the years, because our businesses today still are fairly varied and different, and I have to kind of shift gears pretty regularly throughout the day on what we're doing today. But it did help me get my focus. I had to focus more rapidly. I had to form my judgments more quickly than I would ideally like to have. I know Becky's heard me say several times, I just wish I had a little bit more time to think about that, but sometimes you have to just do it. You might want to know a little bit about what were some of these 400s. I'm just going to touch on a couple of them. Some of them were pretty interesting. With a partner, we purchased Delta Inc. of Arkansas back in about 1980. And this was the company's largest manufacturer of truck toolboxes. I know some of you may have a truck, you may have I doubt if you've got a Delta box on, I'm not sure the brand is still around, but that toolbox right behind the window on the cab was, we were the largest manufacturer of those. These were metal boxes primarily. A close competitor was actually right there in Jonesboro with us, called Storall. We were just beating each other up, and we decided to merge, and we created a huge business with probably the largest in the world at the time. And they had gone into the blow molding business, so they were making plastic boxes, and these machines were almost the size of this room and probably about as high as the length of the room. They were huge things to create a truck box like that. But we had a great success with that business. Also with a partner, we purchased a company called RPAC up in Chicago. It was a manufacturer of shrink wrapping equipment, so that when products came off an assembly line, not assembly line, but a filling line, they'd be stacked on a pallet, and this shrink wrap machinery would just wrap around and get ready for shipment. Had a nice run with that. I spent a lot of time in the injection plastics business. That's something, it has products today we all use, but we don't think about how they come about. Both over in Arkansas and down in Mississippi. We did work for Richards Manufacturing, that I believe, LD, was your business, if I recall. We made a little otological product for you. I think we did all right for you, but I'm sure we had a couple of complications along the way. We did a lot of work for Japanese companies making TV cabinets for Sharp and for Sanyo. We made telephone phones, just like your house phone for, well, to the extent that you've got house phones today. But we made those for AT&T. And then many, many other kinds of products. We bought two failed savings and loan companies back in the mid-'80s when the thrift business was having its complications. We ran those for about 12 years and then sold them to Regions Bank and had a great run, a lot of fun with those businesses. We acquired a workman's compensation receivables business from a local Memphian who had taken the business about as far as he thought he could. And we bought it at a pretty nice size. We quadrupled the revenues and bottom line and then successfully sold it to a national processing company. And then with another partner, we started a tortilla chip manufacturing company called Granddaddy's Nachos. That was his name among the grandkids. A very successful tortilla chip. He was sort of an expert on tortilla chips, and so he decided he wanted to make his own. And he was expert on salsa, so he found a grower out in California who harvested certain kind of tomatoes at a certain time of the year, and when that supply of tomatoes ran out, we were done with the salsa production for that year. But it was a great salsa. So I could tell you about a number of other ones, but I thought I might ask, what do you think is common? I started thinking about what's kind of common about some of these, or commonalities. And I came up with about 5 things that I thought I would mention. I said in several of these and others that we have been involved in, we found what I would describe as an excellent value proposition, a compelling reason why the customer would want to buy that product or service. And so that's something that we focus a lot of time and thought and energy on as we look for businesses to be involved in. In some of these others, we saw an opportunity of being able to buy them inexpensively, such as the thrift business, where the regulators would essentially let you put your capital in. You didn't have to buy anything. Your capital was the new capital of that business. So you didn't have to pay anything for all that. And then you could expand your territory pretty rapidly. In others, we saw that there were some barriers to entry, so that provided a sustainable competitive edge as you were building the business. But across them, we never became involved unless we were very confident about the management team or the leadership in that business. We made a few mistakes along the way in some of those 400. But in most cases, it wasn't because we misjudged the business. We misjudged the people that we thought were going to be associated with us in that business. So that's one of the first things we look at as we look at other business opportunities. And then, as you note, I mentioned partners. We have always been comfortable doing things with partners. It is important that you clarify with your partners on the front end that your value sets are pretty much the same, that you think about things a lot the same way. But by having partners, we found that we've been able to do a whole lot more than just trying to do things on our own. So we're very, very comfortable with that relationship. Today, our company has a lot more focus than it did in Dad's day when he was with us. He loved variety and he loved novelty. But as he aged, he acknowledged it was much more difficult to keep up with all that diversity. But we have to thank him for getting us into a few of the businesses today that are really our kind of backbone of businesses. And one I want to mention in particular is our temp sharing business based in Orlando, known as Orange Lake Country Club. We call it Orange Lake. Well, the family of Orange Lake Resorts is actually how we describe it today. But we started this business from scratch in 1982. We opened our doors to the public in a little trailer down there in February of 1982 on 358 acres of land right near Disney World. We weren't adjacent to it, but we were pretty close. We've since filled in the gaps, and so we've got about a 2-mile common border with Disney on their west side right now. But I think the entry, how we got into this business, is worth a little bit of a story. This was Dad's idea. It was not mine. I told him, I said, you know, we've just come off of, this is 82 now, so we've just come off of a kind of getting our sea legs back after the mid-70s problem I described earlier. We had a little bit of capital, and he said, "No, this is the business we need to be in." And I said, "Why?" So he tells me this story. He had visited Sarasota, Florida, where we've had business operations doing subdivision development or home building since the early 50s. And he visited our associate there after he had retired from Holiday Inns. And our associate took him up to Captiva Island and showed him South Seas Plantation, which is still on the north end of the island there, and told him about these 2 timeshare weeks that he had bought for $5,000 a week each. And Dad had our associate explain timesharing, 51 weeks, 52 weeks, and he did the math real quick. 5,000 times 51, 52, that's $250,000. He said, "Billy," he said, "these things can be built for $30,000. He said, "My gosh, this is a great margin." And Billy started trying to explain, well, you got marketing, you got sales expense, and Dad, I mean, that's the blessed beauty of his simplicity. He just didn't listen to that, and he just said, "This is the business for me." He left the next day, drove to Orlando, and started looking for land. He called it ground. He started looking for ground. He didn't find what he wanted. He was looking around Disney. Didn't find what he wanted. He came back in 30 days, had a couple of real estate agents working for him, and he found this 358-acre piece of ground, 20,000 orange trees on it, it was a big orange grove, and he bought it. And bought it on credit. No, actually, I take that back. He had some asset he had sold, and he took everything that he got out of that asset and bought that piece of land. Now, we didn't have any cash for anything else, but we finally found a banker out of Cincinnati who knew a banker in Sarasota that we knew and trusted us. And we got a big loan from them, and we went forward and built our project, putting all the infrastructure in first. Timeshare didn't have a great name back in the 1982s. A lot of them were converted condos or hotels that had not done well, and most of them just had a swimming pool or very little amenities. Dad wanted to do it right. He said we want to have everything there for families to really enjoy themselves. So we put the golf holes in, we put huge Olympic-sized pool in, and many other things as well. A big clubhouse. So that's how we got into that business. Today, we're about 1,400 acres in size there, so we've bought a lot of land around ourselves. We started with 32 units, little one-story bungalows, I'll call them, 2-bedroom, 2-bath units. And today we've got 2,400 of those little things sitting down there. But they're not just 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, they're 3 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms, some studios, and some 4-bedroom units now, which are just incredibly comfortable. And they come fully equipped. If you don't know about timeshare, they come fully equipped with all the amenities. You just show up with your clothing, and you're in business. I know Pearson and Walker. Well, Walker is one of our best customers, best owners down there. I think he owns 9 or 10 weeks of time, and so we're glad to see him when he comes and camps out down there. But we'll have as many as 12,000 people staying with us in the course of a week. So it's like a little city. We've got golf and tennis and restaurants and water parks, and just, Pearson, you know all the things that are there. So lots of good things. We've since expanded to 5 other resorts. We're all east of the Mississippi. And we are looking forward to expanding on out to Las Vegas and to the west as well, and ultimately on to Hawaii. In fact, those are our kind of target markets as we speak right now. This was a great business for 25 years. It is a fantastic business for us today, and I want to just explain that commentary. We listened to our owners and guests about what they wanted. We started out as a fixed week, fixed time. You bought from us, you got this unit on that floor in that building on week 35, whatever that fell on the calendar year. And so we welcomed you back. We sold it to you, we told you how to use it, and come on back if you wanted to. We changed our business model because our owners told us we needed to do that, and so now we have a points overlay and create a lot of flexibility. And while the rest of our industry is kind of in the tank, we're having a record year ahead. I'll just quickly touch on, we have a relationship now with Holiday Inn, so we have access to their 40 million Priority Club customers, and they have a way for their customers to come and be at a resort in a nice area that they don't now have, can't provide them access to. We have Wilson Air Centers, which are located here in Memphis and Houston and Charlotte. My brother Bob runs that business. These are called FBOs, fixed base operations. For 9 years in a row, the one in Memphis has been the #1 FBO in the country. Our hotel interests are looked after by Kim. We have the University of Memphis Holiday Inn. It has been a Torchbearer Award winner for the last 6 years in a row. And we also run the Grizzlies House down at the St. Jude campus. Our insurance agency continues to do extremely well after a long year of, after a long time of just kind of handling our own business. So I'm going to close with this. So what makes these things kind of special? I can say with confidence, I believe that all of these are distinctive in the areas in which they are operating, their industries, their niches. Each has a management team that is unequaled. I think our team, particularly at Orange Lake, I would stack up against anybody in the country. And I guess it shouldn't be surprising that with good management you have good businesses. And so all of these are doing extremely well. Let me close by saying we're excited that we have several in the third generation. I've mentioned 2 of mine here. My brother Kim has some of his children there. They bring their own talents and interests and approaches. It's fun to spend time with them working on these businesses, and we look forward to whatever the next things might come to us, to our fold. And we're enjoying our time with the Kemmons Wilson Family Foundation. It's a delight to be able to give back to the community, more so than we've been able to in the past. And Lauren and her staff are just doing a superb job in helping us stay focused, holding our grant recipients' feet to the fire to be sure that they do what they say they're doing, and to be sure that our money is being used wisely. I've enjoyed being with you today, and hopefully I've given you a few insights on a couple of things that have become meaningful to us and told you a little bit more about what we are as a business. I'll be happy in the